A hotel guest calls the front desk, and the clerk answers, "May I help you, sir?" The man says, "Yes, I'm in room 858. You need to send someone to my room immediately. I'm having an argument with my wife, and she says she's going to jump out of the window." The desk clerk says, "I'm sorry, sir, but that's a personal matter." The man replies, "Listen, you idiot. The window won't open, and that's clearly a maintenance issue." A man stumbles into his house early in the morning, after a night of partying and heavy drinking, just as the sun is coming up. His wife is waiting for him at the kitchen table, glaring at him. "Is there a reason you're coming home at 6 in the morning with alcohol on your breath, lipstick on your collar?" She shouts at him. "Yes, there is," he replies. "I would like some breakfast." An Englishman and a Jamaican find themselves side by side in a public restroom. Glancing down, they both notice the same WJ tattoo on their packages. Curious, the Jamaican asks, "Hey man, what does yours stand for?" The Englishman replies, "Oh, when things stretch out, it shows my initials, WJ. What about yours?" The Jamaican grins, "Oh, mine? When it stretches, it says, 'Welcome to Jamaica.'" On the very first morning after the wedding, chaos erupted in the house. The groom came storming out of the bedroom, yelling, "Mom, I caught the maid sneaking around the room, and look, she even has my wife's wedding ring in her hand." Everyone rushed to see what was going on. The young woman stood there, confused, still drying her face with a towel. His mother pulled him aside quietly, looked him in the eyes, and whispered, "Son, that's not the maid. That's your wife. She just washed her face and hasn't put on makeup yet." A young guy got a job as a trainee in a supermarket. On his first day at work, he arrived on time, eager to make a fresh beginning. The manager welcomed him with a warm smile and, giving him a broom, said, "Your first job will be to sweep the floor." The young guy protested, "But I'm a college graduate." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that," said the manager. "Here, hand me the broom, I'll show you how to sweep the floor." One day an elderly fisherman was lying on a beautiful beach, with his fishing pole propped up in the sand and his solitary line cast out into the sparkling blue surf. He was enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun and the prospect of catching a fish. About that time, a businessman came walking down the beach, trying to relieve some of the stress of his workday. He noticed the old fisherman sitting on the beach and decided to find out why this fisherman was fishing instead of working harder to make a living for himself and his family. "You aren't going to catch many fish that way," said the businessman to the fisherman. "You should be working rather than lying on the beach." The old fisherman looked up at the businessman, smiled and replied, "And what will my reward be?" "Well, you can get bigger nets and catch more fish," was the businessman's answer. "And then what will my reward be?" asked the old fisherman, still smiling. The businessman replied, "You will make money and you'll be able to buy a boat, which will then result in larger catches of fish." "And then what will my reward be?" asked the fisherman again. The businessman was beginning to get a little irritated with the old fisherman's questions. "You can buy a bigger boat and hire some people to work for you," he said. "And then what will my reward be?" repeated the old fisherman. The businessman was getting angry. "Don't you understand? You can build up a fleet of fishing boats, sail all over the world, and let all your employees catch fish for you." Once again the old fisherman asked, "And then what will my reward be?" The businessman was red with rage and shouted at the old fisherman, "Don't you understand that you can become so rich that you will never have to work for your living again? You can spend all the rest of your days sitting on this beach, looking at the sunset. You won't have a care in the world." The old fisherman, still smiling, looked up and said, "And what do you think I'm doing right now?" A married man was having an affair with his secretary. One afternoon, unable to resist their desires, they decided to sneak off to her house. After an indulgent few hours, they both dozed off, only to wake up around 8 p.m. Panicking, the man quickly got dressed and came up with a plan. He turned to the woman and said, "Take my shoes outside and rub them in the grass and dirt." Although puzzled, she did as he asked. Once his shoes were sufficiently scuffed, he slipped them on, kissed her goodbye, and headed home. As soon as he walked through the door, his wife confronted him. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "Darling," he said, attempting to sound sincere, "I won't lie to you. I've been having an affair with my secretary. I fell asleep at her house and didn't wake up until 8. His wife looked him up and down, her gaze landing on his shoes. "You liar," she snapped. "You've been playing golf." Last night, I met this charming woman at a bar. She was in her 60s but carried herself so well that she looked years younger. I couldn't help but think, wow, she must have passed some great genes down to her kids. We hit it off, shared a few laughs over a couple of beers, and then she leaned in with a playful look and asked, "Ever heard of a sportsman's double?" Curious, I asked, "What's that?" With a grin, she said, "It's when two generations team up." I laughed, thinking she had quite the sense of humor. After a bit more chatting, she smiled and said, "Well, you're in for a fun surprise tonight." Intrigued, I followed her back to her place. When we got there, she turned on the hallway light and called upstairs. "Mom, you still awake?" The boss was puzzled when one of his most reliable employees didn't show up for work and hadn't called in. With an urgent issue on his hands, he decided to call the employees home. The phone rang and was answered by a child's soft whisper, "Hello." "Hi there," the boss said kindly. "Is your daddy home?" "Yes," whispered the little voice. "Can I speak with him?" "No," came the quiet reply. A bit surprised, the boss asked, "Is your mommy there?" "Yes," the child whispered. "Can I talk to her?" "No," the child replied again. Now getting concerned, the boss asked, "Is anyone else there?" "Yes," whispered the child. "A policeman." The boss, now alarmed, asked, "May I speak with the policeman?" "No, he's busy," came the whisper. "Busy doing what?" the boss pressed. "Talking to Mommy and Daddy and the fireman," the child answered. The boss was getting more worried by the second, especially when he heard a strange rumbling noise through the phone. "What's that sound?" he asked. "A helicopter," the child whispered. Now truly alarmed, the boss demanded, "What's going on over there?" The child paused for a moment, then whispered back with a soft giggle, "The search team just landed the helicopter." The boss, now completely baffled, asked, "What are they searching for?" The little voice giggled even more and whispered, "Me." It was a typical morning at the Smith's house during breakfast when Linda glanced at her husband, Frank, with a sharp look and said, "I bet you don't even remember what today is." Frank, caught off guard but trying to save face, quickly replied, "Of course I remember," and rushed out the door for work. The moment he reached his office, he burst into his best friend Mark's office in a panic. "Mark, I'm in trouble. I think today's my wife's birthday and I totally forgot." Mark, trying to help, suggested, "Don't worry, just send her a series of gifts throughout the day. That way it'll seem like you planned it all along, and if you choose right, she'll be over the moon." Frank thought it was genius. So he sent Linda a gorgeous dress, followed by her favorite perfume, and later, some elegant lingerie, each arriving at their doorstep hours apart. That evening, Frank strolled into the house, proud of his clever cover-up. Linda greeted him at the door, absolutely glowing. First the stunning dress, then my favorite perfume, and even some lingerie. "You really went all out, honey. I'm so touched." Frank, grinning, replied, "Anything for you, my love. Happy." But before he could finish, Linda interrupted with a smile. "I never thought I'd be wearing such beautiful things just to pick up my mother from the airport." A man decided to bring his wife with him to a large convention in Chicago. After they checked into their hotel and were shown to their room, he told her, "You relax here while I register. I'll be back in about an hour." His wife lay down on the bed, but just then, an elevated train passed by so close to the window that the room shook violently, tossing her right off the bed. Thinking it was just a fluke, she climbed back into bed, only for the train to pass again, shaking the room so hard that she was thrown to the floor. Annoyed, she called the front desk and asked for the manager. The manager, a bit skeptical, came up to the room. The wife insisted that the shaking was real and happening every time the train went by. "Just lie down here on the bed," she said. "You'll be thrown right to the floor." So, the manager skeptically lay down on the bed. Just then, The husband walked in and looked at the scene with a raised eyebrow. "What?" he asked. "Are you doing here?" The manager, caught off guard, calmly replied, "Would you believe I'm waiting for a train?" Two golfing friends were about to tee off, when one fellow noticed that his partner had but one golf ball. "Don't you have at least one other ball?" he asked. "Nope, I only need one ball." "Are you sure? What happens if you lose that one?" "This is a very special golf ball. You can't lose it, so I don't need another one." "What do you mean you can't lose it? What happens if you slice your shot and the ball goes in the lake?" "That's okay. This special golf ball senses when it's underwater and it puts out a steam of bubbles. I'll be able to retrieve it. You can't lose this ball." "Well, what happens if you hit it into the long rough?" "No problem, you see, this ball can detect the long grass and it sends up puffs of fluorescent smoke. I'll be able to see it easily. You can't lose this ball." Exasperated, the friend asks, "Okay, let's say our game goes late, the sun goes down, and you hit your ball deep into the trees and it gets lost among the bushes and shrubs. What are you going to do then?" "That's okay too. You see, this special ball can sense the darkness and it makes a beeping sound. I'll be able to get it back. No problem." Finally satisfied that he needs only the one amazing golf ball, the friend asks, "Hey, where did you get a golf ball like that anyway?" "I found it." A guy goes golfing with his girlfriend. As he tees off, she steps into Lady's tee box and gets hit in the head with his drive. She is pronounced DOA and taken to the morgue. The coroner calls him in and says, "She definitely died from a blow to the head caused by the golf ball. But the only thing we can't understand is why was there a golf ball in her rectum?" "Oh," he replies, "that must have been my mulligan." During a heated Little League game, Coach Thompson pulled one of his 9-year-old players, Jake, aside for a serious chat. "Listen, Jake, do you know what cooperation means? Do you understand what being part of a team is all about?" Jake nodded sagely. "Yeah, Coach, teamwork means we all win or lose together." "Exactly," said Coach Thompson, looking proud. "And when an out is called, do you understand that we don't argue, we don't curse the umpire, and we definitely don't call him well, you know, a big jerk?" Jake, wide-eyed, nodded again. "Got it, Coach." Coach Thompson leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "And when I pull you out of the game to give someone else a chance to play, it's not because I'm trying to sabotage your career or because I'm secretly plotting your downfall, right?" Jake gave a reassuring nod. "Nope, Coach, I totally get it." "Good," said Coach Thompson, clapping him on the back. "Now, go over there and explain all that to your grandmother." A very proper businesswoman was browsing the lot of a local Mercedes dealership when one particular car caught her eye. After inspecting it for a while, she noticed the car was unlocked. She opened the door, leaned in to feel the soft leather seats, and, just as she bent over, she let out a tiny fart. Being the refined businesswoman that she was, she straightened up, adjusted her suit, and quickly looked around to see if anyone had noticed. Sure enough, a salesman appeared right behind her. Trying to steer the conversation away from what just happened, she asked, "What's your best price for this model?" Without missing a beat, the salesman replied, "Well, ma'am, if you farted just by touching it, you're gonna poop when you hear the price." A 5-year-old boy was visiting his grandma, happily playing with his toys while she dusted her bedroom. Out of nowhere, he looked up and asked, "Grandma, how come you don't have a boyfriend now that Grandpa's in heaven?" Grandma smiled and said, "Sweetheart, my TV is my boyfriend. I can sit in my room and watch it all day. The religious programs make me feel good, and the comedies make me laugh. I'm happy with my TV as my boyfriend." Just then, she turned on the TV, but the reception was terrible. Frustrated, she started fiddling with the knobs, tapping the back of the TV, trying to fix it. Meanwhile, the doorbell rang. The little boy ran to open the door and saw Grandma's minister standing there. The minister smiled. "Hello, young man. Is your grandma home?" The boy grinned and said, "Yeah. She's in the bedroom banging her boyfriend." The minister fainted. A young couple heads up to the mountains for a cozy, romantic winter getaway. Snow-covered trees, A charming little cabin. It's the perfect setting. As soon as they arrive, the guy decides to chop some firewood to keep them warm. After a while, he stomps back inside, rubbing his hands together. "Babe, my hands are freezing," he complains. With a sly smile, she pulls him close and purrs, "Come here, I'll warm them up between my legs." Feeling thoroughly encouraged, he heads out again, chops more wood, and returns with the same complaint. Again, she offers her a natural heating system. This happens a couple more times, and he's starting to enjoy firewood duty a little too much. After dinner, determined to keep them warm all night, he goes out for one final round. When he returns, shivering, he holds out his hands and groans, "Honey, my hands are really freezing this time." She sighs, rolls her eyes, and says, "For crying out loud, do your ears never get cold?" A little girl approached her father and said, "Daddy, I wish I had a little sister." Trying to be funny, her dad replied, "But honey, you do have a little sister." The toddler looked puzzled. "I do?" she asked. "Of course," her dad teased. "You never see her because every time you come in the front door, she sneaks out the back." The little girl paused, thinking hard, then her face lit up with a big smile. "Oh, you mean just like my other daddy?" A young couple moved into a new neighborhood. The next morning, while they are eating breakfast, the young woman sees her neighbor hanging the wash outside. "That laundry is not very clean," she said. "She doesn't know how to wash correctly. Perhaps she needs better laundry soap." Her husband looked on but remained silent. Every time her neighbor would hang her wash to dry, the young woman would make the same comments. About 1 month later, the woman was surprised to see a nice clean wash on the line and said to her husband, "Look, she has learned how to wash correctly. I wonder who taught her this." The husband said, "I got up early this morning and cleaned our windows." Two men were enduring a painfully slow round of golf because the two women ahead of them seemed to find every sand trap, water hazard, and patch of rough on the course. Adding to their frustration, the ladies didn't bother to let the men play through, ignoring standard golf etiquette. After 2 hours of waiting, one man finally said, "I've had enough. I'll go up there and ask them to let us through." He started walking down the fairway but stopped halfway, turned around, and came back, looking sheepish. "I can't do it," he said. "One of those women is my wife, and the other is my mistress. Maybe you should go instead." The second man agreed and began walking toward the ladies. But just like his friend, he stopped halfway, turned around, and returned with an awkward smile. "Small world," he said. An old man sat alone in a private box at a major football final, a glaringly empty seat beside him. A young fan, noticing the unusual vacancy at such an exclusive event, approached him with a curious grin. "Excuse me, sir," the young man said. "Who would pay for such an expensive seat at a final like this and not show up? Mind if I sit here?" The old man looked up, his eyes heavy with sadness. "For 50 years, my wife and I came to every major final together. This was our tradition. But she passed away recently, and now I'm here alone. You're welcome to sit here if you'd like." The young man, touched by the story, nodded and took the seat. As they watched the game in silence for a few moments, curiosity got the better of him. "I hope you don't mind me asking," the young man said hesitantly, "but, as heartbreaking as your story is, didn't you have any relatives, children, grandchildren, or friends, who could have come with you today?" The old man turned to him with a faint smile and replied, "Oh, I do. But they're all at the funeral." The young man's jaw dropped as he realized the old man's devotion to his late wife and their shared tradition, even in the face of such bittersweet irony. An 80-year-old woman stood in court, facing the judge after being caught shoplifting a can of peaches. The judge leaned forward and asked, "Ma'am, can you tell me why you stole the peaches?" The elderly woman looked down, her voice trembling as she replied, "Your Honor, my husband and I are struggling. We don't have any money, and I was very hungry." The judge nodded, showing a hint of sympathy. "How many peaches were in the can?" he asked. "6, she said quietly. The judge sighed and declared, "In that case, I'm sentencing you to 1 day in jail for each peach, 6 days in total." Before the judge could finalize the sentence, the woman's husband suddenly stood up from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor," he said, raising his hand, If it helps, I feel I should let you know. Last week, she also stole a can of peas. On the first day of college, the dean addressed the students, pointing out some of the rules. The female dormitory will be out of bounds for all male students, and the male dormitory to the female students. Anybody caught breaking this rule will be fined $20 the first time. He continued, anybody caught breaking this rule the second time will be fined $60. Being caught a third time will cost you a fine of $180. Are there any questions? At this point, a male student in the crowd inquired, how much for a season pass? A man was fed up. Every day, he dragged himself to work for 8 grueling hours while his wife stayed home doing whatever it was she did. One evening, he couldn't take it anymore and decided to have a little chat with the big guy upstairs. Dear Lord, he prayed, I work hard all day while my wife stays home. I want her to know what I go through. Please, just for one day, switch our bodies so she can see how tough my life is. Now, God, being all-knowing and having a wicked sense of humor, decided to grant the man's wish. The next morning, the man woke up as a woman. He blinked at his reflection in the mirror, shrugged, and thought, how hard could this be? Spoiler, it was hard. By 6 a.m., he was cooking breakfast while dodging flying cereal bowls. He wrestled the kids out of bed like a WWE champion, dressed them, which somehow involved tying 27 shoelaces, and packed their lunches. After dropping them at school, he swung by the dry cleaners, wrestled a cart through the grocery store, and speed cleaned the house like a caffeinated Roomba. By 1 p.m., he was knee-deep in laundry, covered in dog hair from bathing the dog, and trying to figure out how a single cat could poop so much. He barely had time to breathe before it was time to pick up the kids. Cue chaos, homework arguments, snack negotiations, and a full-blown meltdown over mismatched socks. He ironed while watching Judge Judy, peeled potatoes like he was defusing a bomb, and breaded pork chops while dreaming of his old desk job. Dinner came and went in a flurry of dishes, crumbs, and complaints about broccoli. Then it was bath time, bedtime stories, and tucking the kids in. By the time he crawled into bed, he was an exhausted wreck. And then, his wife, or rather, he, gave him that look. Seriously, he muttered. But he went through with it because he was a trooper. The next morning, completely wrecked, he knelt by the bed and begged, Lord, I was so wrong. Please, I'll never complain again. Just switch us back. God, chuckling from above, replied, Well, about that. You got pregnant last night. So, you're gonna need to ride this out for the next 9 months. And that's when the man realized, God truly does work in mysterious and hilarious ways. The drunk was floundering down the alley carrying a box with holes on the side. He bumped into a friend who asked, What do you have in there, pal? A mongoose. What for? Well, you know how drunk I can get. When I get drunk I see snakes, and I'm scared to death of snakes. That's why I got this mongoose, for protection. But, the friend said, You idiot. Those are imaginary snakes. That's okay, said the drunk, showing his friend the interior of the box. So is the mongoose. His request approved, the news photographer quickly used a cell phone to call the local airport to charter a flight. He was told a twin-engine plane would be waiting for him at the airport. Arriving at the airfield, he spotted a plane warming up outside a hangar. He jumped in with his bag, slammed the door shut, and shouted, Let's go! The pilot taxied out, swung the plane into the wind and took off. Once in the air, the photographer instructed the pilot, Fly over the valley and make low passes so I can take pictures of the fires on the hillsides. Why? Asked the pilot. Because I'm a photographer for cable news, he responded. And I need to get some close-up shots. The pilot was strangely silent for a moment. Finally he stammered, So, what you're telling me is, you're not my flight instructor? A girl was given a tea set for her 2nd birthday. It became one of her favorite toys, and when her mother went away for a few weeks to care for her sick aunt, the toddler loved to take her father a little cup of tea, which was just water really, while he was engrossed watching the news on TV. He sipped each cup of tea he was brought and lavished generous praise on the taste, leaving the little girl immensely proud. Eventually, the mother returned home, and the father couldn't wait to show her how his little princess had been looking after him. On cue, the girl took him his cup of tea, and he sipped it before praising it to the heavens. The mother watched him drink it and said, "Did it ever occur to you that the only place she can reach to get water is the toilet?" The rain was pouring, and there was a big puddle in front of the pub. A ragged old man was standing there with a rod and hanging a string into the puddle. A tipsy-looking, curious gentleman came over to him and asked what he was doing. "Fishing," the old man said simply. "Poor old fool," the gentleman thought, and he invited the ragged old man to a drink in the pub. As he felt he should start some conversation while they were sipping their whiskey, the gentleman asked, "And how many have you caught?" "You're the 8th. A family are driving in their car on holidays. A frog crosses the road and the husband, who is driving, is able to stop the car. He gets out and takes the frog and carries him to the side of the road. The frog is grateful, thanks the man and tells him that he will grant him a wish. The man says, "Please make my dog win the next dog race." The frog asks to look at the dog, which limps out of the car. The frog notices that the dog only has 3 legs, it very fat, and can barely move at all, so he tells the man that he thinks it is almost impossible to fulfill his wish and asks that the man will tell him another wish. The man says, "Well, then please make my wife win the next beauty contest in the area." The frog asks him to tell his wife to get out of the car. Wife comes out of the car and approaches the frog. The frog turns to the man and says, "Could I please have another look at the dog?" A young doctor had moved out to a small community to replace a doctor who was retiring. The older doctor suggested the young one accompany him on his rounds, so the community could become used to a new doctor. At the first house a woman complained, "I've been a little sick to my stomach." The older doctor said, "Well, you've probably been overdoing the fresh fruit. Why don't you cut back on the amount you've been eating and see if that does the trick?" As they left, the younger man said, "You didn't even examine that woman. How'd you come to your diagnosis so quickly?" "I didn't have to. You noticed I dropped my stethoscope on the floor in there? When I bent over to pick it up, I noticed a half-dozen banana peels in the trash. That was what was probably making her sick." The younger doctor said. "Pretty clever. I think I'll try that at the next house." Arriving at the next house, they spent several minutes talking with a younger woman. She complained that she just didn't have the energy she once did. "I'm feeling terribly run down lately." "You've probably been doing too much extra work for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Perhaps you should cut back a bit and see if that helps." As they left, the elder doc said, "Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct, but how did you arrive at it?" "Well, just like you did at the last house, I dropped my stethoscope and when I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed the preacher under the bed. There's a guy with a Doberman pinscher and a guy with a Chihuahua. The guy with the Doberman pinscher says to the guy with the Chihuahua, 'Let's go over to that restaurant and get something to eat.' The guy with the Chihuahua says, 'We can't go in there. We've got dogs with us.' The guy with the Doberman pinscher says, 'Just follow my lead.' They walk over to the restaurant. The guy with the Doberman pinscher puts on a pair of dark glasses, and he starts to walk in. A guy at the door says, 'Sorry, Mac, no pets allowed.' The guy with the Doberman pinscher says, 'You don't understand. This is my seeing eye dog.' The guy at the door says, 'A Doberman pinscher?' He says, 'Yes, they're using them now, they're very good.' The guy at the door says, 'Come on in.' The guy with the Chihuahua figures, 'What the heck?' So he puts on a pair of dark glasses and starts to walk in. The guy at the door says, 'Sorry, pal, no pets allowed.' The guy with the Chihuahua says, 'You don't understand. This is my seeing eye dog.' The guy at the door says, 'A Chihuahua?' The guy with the Chihuahua says, 'You mean they gave me a Chihuahua?' Two young guys appear in court after being arrested for smoking dope. The judge says, 'You seem like nice young men, and I'd like to give you a second chance instead of jail time. I want you to go out this weekend and try to convince others of the evils of drug use. I'll see you back in court Monday.' On Monday, the judge asks the first guy, 'How did you do over the weekend?' 'Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 17 people to give up drugs forever.' 17 people? That's wonderful. How did you do it?' 'I used a diagram, Your Honor. I drew 2 circles like this. Then I told them that the big circle is your brain before drugs and the small circle is your brain after drugs.' "That's admirable," says the judge. Then he turns to the second guy. "And how did you do?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 156 people to give up drugs forever." "Wow," says the judge. 156 people. How did you manage to do that?" "Well, I used a similar diagram," the guy says. "I drew 2 circles like this. Then I pointed to the little circle and said, 'This is your asshole before prison.'" As soon as the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, the young bride called her mother, who lived a couple of hours away. "How did everything go?" her mom asked. "Oh, Mother," she began, "the honeymoon was wonderful. So romantic. We had a terrific time. But, Mother, on our way back, Andy started using really horrible language. Stuff I'd never heard before. Really terrible 4-letter words. You've got to come get me and take me home. Please, Mother," the new bride sobbed over the telephone. "But, honey," the mother countered, "what 4-letter words? I can't tell you, Mother. They're too awful. Come get me, please." "Darling, you must tell me what has gotten you so upset." "Tell Mother what 4-letter words he used." Still sobbing, the bride said, "Mother, words like dust, wash, iron, cook." A guy applies for a job at the post office. The interviewer asks, "Are you allergic to anything?" "Yes, caffeine. I can't drink coffee." "Got it. Ever served in the military?" "Yes, 1 tour in Afghanistan." "That gives you 5 extra points toward hiring." "Any disabilities?" "Yeah, a bomb exploded near me, and I lost both my testicles." The interviewer winces but says, "All right. You've got enough points. I can hire you right now. Our hours are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You start tomorrow at 10. The guy frowns. "If work starts at 8, why am I coming in at 10? The interviewer leans back and shrugs. "This is a government job. For the first 2 hours, we just stand around drinking coffee and scratching our balls. No point in you coming in for that."